Dodge, a Stellantis subsidiary, used to be the king of American muscle cars. However, they have fallen off in the last couple years. First, they killed off one of their most popular cars, went electric, and then they ditched those glorious Hellcat engines, basically turning their back on everything that made Dodge, well, Dodge. It almost feels like they just don't care what their customers want. Dodge fans are furious, and rightfully so, because the iconic American muscle car brand is teetering on the edge, seriously in danger of becoming a distant memory.
Carmaker Dodge pumping the brakes on some old favorites. The Challenger, the automaker announcing it will discontinue its gas-powered muscle cars at the end of next year.
And when you thought things couldn't become any worse, Stellantis dropped another bombshell that's got the entire car world scratching their heads. It's like they're playing a game of corporate chicken, and we're all wondering if they're gonna crash and burn. So what exactly did they announce? And how on earth does this impact the future of the company? Buckle up, because this is going to be a wild ride. You know, sometimes automakers just don't get it. It feels like they're completely out of touch. People don't really want electric vehicles, at least not the way they're being pushed right now. And honestly, you'd think a brand like Dodge would understand that better than most. I mean, come on, Dodge is all about raw power, loud engines, and that unmistakable rumble under the hood. That's the heart of their cars, right? Take the Charger and Challenger, for example. These two are absolute legends with some pretty cool stories behind them. At least I think so. Let's start with the Charger. It rolled off the production line for the first time in 1966. Back then, Dodge had this idea to market it as something more sophisticated, a car for the grown-ups, because pony cars were seen as kid stuff. Oh, and speaking of pony cars, if you've never heard of that term, let me break it down for you real quick. A pony car is basically like a muscle car's younger sibling. It's a bit smaller, with a unibody design, and offers a range of engine options, including V8s. But to be a true muscle car, at least the way Dodge saw it back then, you needed a proper V8 under the hood. No exceptions. Pony cars might have been fun, but muscle cars? They were the real deal. Now back to the Charger. This beast wasn't just a street car, it made a name for itself on the track too. It hit the NASCAR scene in 1968, but things didn't go as planned at first. Turns out the original design wasn't exactly built for the high-speed demands of stock car racing. So what did Dodge do? They went back to the drawing board and came up with the Charger 500, a sleeker, more aerodynamic version designed to dominate the oval tracks. And boy, did it work. By 1970, the Charger wasn't just competing, it was crushing the competition. It won more NASCAR races that year than any other car on the track. Pretty impressive, right? Then there's the Challenger, which showed up a little later in 1970. This one was Dodge's answer to the Ford Mustang and Chevrolet Camaro. It brought that same bold muscle car attitude, but with its own unique flair. Between the two, Charger and Challenger, Dodge really carved out its spot in American car culture. These cars weren't just vehicles, they were statements. They were loud, proud, and unapologetically American. That's why it feels so weird seeing Dodge trying to steer into the electric vehicle lane. Sure, times change, and electric cars are the future, but there's something about the roar of a V8 and the smell of burning rubber that electric vehicles just can't replicate. Now, when it comes to the Charger, there's one version that stands head and shoulders above the rest, the 1975 to 1985 era, and you know why? Because of the Dukes of Hazzard. Seriously, who didn't love watching those two cousins, Bo and Luke Duke, tearing up dirt roads, dodging Boss Hogg, and causing mayhem in their custom 1969 Dodge Charger, the General Lee, that bright orange beauty with the 001 painted on the side and the Confederate flag on the roof, which is a whole other conversation now, became one of the most recognizable cars in TV history. Thanks to that show, the Charger earned its spot in the Muscle Car Hall of Fame. But here's where things got weird. After 1974, Dodge started making some, let's call them questionable choices. First, they decided to shift gears and turn the Charger into a luxury car. A luxury car. Can you even imagine? It went from being this raw, untamed beast to something that looked like it should come with a cigar lighter and a subscription to yacht club magazines. Then, as if that wasn't bad enough, in the early 1980s, specifically from 1982 to 1987, they decided to make it a subcompact hatchback. Yep, you heard that right, a hatchback. It was like Dodge completely forgot who they were or what made the Charger great in the first place. The result was a car that looked less like a muscle car and more like a bad fashion choice from the 80s. No wonder it disappeared from the lineup for almost 2 decades after that. Fast forward to 2006, and Dodge finally came to their senses. Or at least kind of. They brought the Charger back, but this time as a 4-door sedan. Now, I know what you're thinking. A Charger with 4 doors. What happened to the sleek 2-door design? But hear me out. At least this version packed a punch. Dodge made sure to offer plenty of engine options, including some with serious horsepower. It wasn't exactly the rebellious muscle car of the 60s, but it was practical. You could haul your kids to soccer practice, hit the grocery store, and still have enough power to leave everyone in the dust. It might not have been perfect, but the 2006 Charger was a step in the right direction, a way to bring the legend back to life while still making it work for modern drivers. While the Charger was going through its identity crisis, the Challenger managed to stick to its roots for the most part. This car stayed true to the classic 2-door pony car style that Dodge was famous for, and honestly, it worked out pretty well. Between 1970 and 1974, the Challenger was an absolute star in the pony car world. People loved it. It was sleek, powerful, and oozed cool. But like all good things, this golden age didn't last. By the late 70s, from 1978 to 1983, the Challenger went through the same kind of awkward phase as the Charger. It lost that sporty, aggressive look that made it special and became, well, bland. It was like someone at Dodge forgot what the Challenger was supposed to be. No surprise that the Challenger vanished entirely after that. It felt like Dodge had given up on it. Then came 2008, and oh man, did the Challenger come back swinging. This wasn't just a comeback, it was a redemption arc. When Dodge announced the 3rd generation Challenger, people were hyped. We're talking 6,400 pre-orders before it even hit the streets. That's how much people missed this car, and Dodge didn't just bring it back, they brought it back right. The new design paid homage to the original 1st generation models, with that retro vibe and modern muscle. It was like they took everything people loved about the 70s Challengers and gave it a 21st century glow up. They even revived the iconic Dukes of Hazzard orange. How cool is that? From 2008 all the way to 2023, the Challenger thrived. It became one of Dodge's most popular models, delivering on both nostalgia and performance. But as with all things in the car world, trends shift. In 2022, Challenger sales hit a rough patch. They dropped a massive 26% from 12,996 units in 2022 to just 9,610 in 2023. That was a tough blow, especially since it was the only Dodge model to see such a big decline that year. Now, just when you thought Dodge couldn't possibly make any more questionable decisions, they went ahead and hit the gas, straight into a wall of controversy. Buckle up, because this one's a doozy. Back in January of 2022, Dodge dropped a bombshell. They announced the end of the Hemi Fuzz 8 Charger. Yes, you read that right. No more roaring V8 engines that we all know and love. Instead, they revealed plans to shift gears and dive headfirst into the world of electric sports cars. Now, I don't know about you, but to me, electric and sports car just don't belong in the same sentence. It's like pairing pineapple and pizza. Some people swear by it, but the rest of us are just shaking our heads. What's coming next is the Charger Daytona Banshee, a sleek coupe Dodge introduced as a concept car in 2022. At first, it seemed like a fun little experiment, but now it's full steam ahead into production, with Dodge planning to roll out 2 models, the Charger Daytona RT and the Charger Daytona Scat Pack. Here's the kicker though, both of these are going to be all-electric vehicles, and if that wasn't enough, Dodge announced that there would be 0 options for gas engines. None. Nada. Zip. They're going all in on EVs, effectively shutting the door on anyone who still loves the roar of a traditional engine. Look, I get that the world is shifting towards electric vehicles. It's the whole save the planet vibe. And sure, it makes sense for your daily commuter car, but a sports car? Sports cars are about passion, power, and yes, that deep guttural growl when you hit the accelerator. EVs, no matter how fast or innovative, just don't deliver that same visceral experience. By focusing exclusively on electric sports cars, Dodge is taking a massive gamble. They're narrowing their audience to a niche group of people who are both into high-performance EVs and willing to pay a premium for one. And let's be real, that's a small slice of the pie. Cutting out the majority of your loyal, gas-loving customer base feels like a risky move, if not downright foolish. Sure, they might win some eco-conscious fans, but at what cost? Let's talk about the Challenger. Well, what's left of it? Or should I say, what isn't left of it, because Dodge has officially ended its production. Yep, they've closed the chapter on this iconic pony car, and honestly, who knows what its future holds? Add to that the departure of Stellantis CEO Carlos Tavares, who didn't exactly win fans with his decision-making skills. His tenure seemed to do more harm than good to the Dodge and Jeep brands, tarnishing their once solid reputations. Maybe with him gone, things could turn around. Fingers crossed, right? Now, Dodge has been hyping up their new electric Charger Daytona, boasting that it's capable of 670 horsepower. Sounds impressive, but let's be real. No matter how much power you pack into an electric car, it's never going to replicate the raw, thunderous experience of a V8 engine. That growl, the vibration in your chest, the sheer thrill, it's what muscle cars are all about. And sadly, it's all being swapped out for the hum of an electric motor. I hate to say it, but turning the Charger into an all-electric vehicle feels like a colossal misstep for Dodge. Should we really be surprised though? Let's face it, electric cars have yet to win over hardcore V8 enthusiasts, the very people who have kept the Charger and Challenger alive and thriving. These folks don't just like muscle cars, they live for them. They crave the thrill of the 392 or the supercharged Hellcat, which were absolute beasts on the road. These cars weren't just vehicles, they were statements. They've been sought after by car enthusiasts, even with their steep price tags. Sure, not everyone could afford a Hellcat or a 392, but that didn't stop people from admiring them or aspiring to own one. You still see them roaring down highways, turning heads at car meets, and dominating drag strips. And for Dodge to suddenly pull the plug on these legendary machines, it's no wonder their loyal fan base is fuming. The backlash has been intense, and honestly, it's hard to blame people. Dodge is taking a massive gamble by betting their future on EVs and leaving their traditional muscle car fans in the dust. Alright, so here's the lowdown on Dodge and their electric vehicle plans. It kind of feels like they're trying to modernize, but not in the way we were hoping for. Instead of sticking with their legendary V8s and Hemis, while adding a cool all-electric sports car as an option, you know, like a nice balance between old and new, they've decided to completely phase out the V8 lineup. Yeah, you heard that right, no more iconic V8s. And for anyone who's been hooked on that rumbling power of a classic muscle car engine, it's kind of a big deal. I mean, why not just make a brand new electric sports car with its own unique vibe? Let it have its own identity, you know? That way, they could preserve the classics while also bringing something fresh to the table. Naturally, Dodge is getting a ton of backlash for this move. I totally get it. Sports car fans live for that rush of slamming the pedal to the metal and hearing that engine growl. The sound alone is like an adrenaline shot, right? It's half the thrill of owning a muscle car. So knowing that, Dodge decided to roll out a bit of a compromise to keep some of their loyal followers from totally jumping ship. Enter the Dodge Charger 6-pack. Sounds kind of cool, right? But before you get too hyped, there's a catch. It's not bringing back the V8. So what's under the hood of the Charger 6-pack instead? It's a 2025 model, and it's packing a 3-liter twin-turbo inline-6 engine. And don't worry, Dodge isn't offering just one version. There's some choice involved. First up, the standard output SO model, which cranks out up to 420 horsepower. Pretty solid, but then there's the high output HO version, which kicks that up to an impressive 550 horsepower. Both of these are part of Dodge's new Hurricane engine lineup, which is pretty cool in its own right. And just when you thought they couldn't squeeze in any more options, they also give you the choice of a 2-door or 4-door design. So you get a little flexibility depending on whether you want to go for the more classic muscle car feel, or need something a bit more practical for, you know, everyday driving, or maybe even impressing your friends with the back seat space. However, there's a bit of a catch, or maybe even a couple of catches with the new Charger 6-pack. First of all, it's coming standard with all-wheel drive. Sounds awesome for handling, right? More grip, better control. Perfect for those rainy days. But here's the thing, all-wheel drive can kind of mess with those classic muscle car moments, like burnouts and donuts. I mean, what's a muscle car if you can't have a little fun leaving a trail of tire smoke behind? Unless you're willing to get a little creative with modifications, that's probably gonna be a thing of the past. Definitely a bit of a bummer, but hey, there's always a way to tweak things if you're really set on it. Now, let's talk about that new engine they're hyping up. Dodge is really pushing this new engine as the perfect successor to the iconic V8s we all know and love. They're claiming the standard output version has more horsepower and torque than the old 5.7-liter V8 that used to come in the RT models. Pretty impressive, right? And the high output version is supposed to outshine the 6.4-liter V8 that was in the Scat Pack. That's a lot of power on paper, but here's the thing, as much as the numbers sound great, it's really the experience experience that matters. It's that growl, that deep rumble of the V8, the pure thrill of feeling that engine roar to life. You can't really put that into a set of specs. So while the numbers are impressive, will it capture that same spirit of those beloved V8s? We'll see. On top of that, Mickey Bly, who's in charge of propulsion systems over at Stellantis, has shared some interesting plans for the future. Stellantis is setting some big goals. They're gunning to become the leader in electrification in the US, aiming for 50% of their vehicle sales to be all electric by the year 2030. Now, that's a pretty bold move, especially considering how entrenched gas-powered engines are in the muscle car world. But here's the twist. Even with these big electrification goals, they're not totally giving up on internal combustion engines, ICEs, just yet. They're planning to balance the two, so it'll be interesting to see how they manage that shift over the next few years. According to Bly, ICEs will still play a critical role in their lineup for the foreseeable future, and they're not just sticking with old habits, they're committed to making these engines as clean and efficient as possible. As Bly put it, we owe it to our customers and the environment to provide the cleanest, most efficient propulsion possible. That's where their Hurricane twin-turbo engine comes into play. This new engine is designed to be a no-compromise solution. It delivers better fuel efficiency and cuts down on greenhouse gas emissions, all while keeping the performance levels that Stellantis customers love. In other words, they're trying to give people the best of both worlds. The thrill of driving a high-powered car without feeling guilty about its environmental impact. It's a smart move when you think about it. While the industry is clearly leaning toward electrification, not everyone is ready to make the leap to EVs just yet. By offering a more eco-friendly combustion engine, Stellantis is giving drivers an option that feels familiar while still being a step in the right direction for the planet. Stellantis is out here making some pretty bold claims about their new inline-6 engine, saying it can push out the same kind of horsepower and torque as the legendary Hemi V8. Now, don't get me wrong, that's some seriously impressive talk, but honestly, we'll believe it when we see it. We've all been around long enough to know that when new products hit the market, we're usually better off waiting a bit before rushing out to buy them. I mean, the first couple of years are often filled with all kinds of glitches and issues. Just look at the Toyota Tundra, for example. They've had all kinds of engine problems that popped up right when the new models came out. But here's the thing, even if this inline-6 engine does hit those Hemi V8 numbers, it is still very unlikely to win over the die-hard V8 fans. I mean, deep down, we all know it's just not going to feel the same. There's something about that V8 growl, the power it delivers, and the way it feels when you punch the gas. Sure, an inline-6 might be more efficient, but let's face it, it just doesn't have the same soul. I really don't see how this plan is making any of the V8 lovers happy. Even if the performance numbers are there, it's hard to replace the emotional connection people have with that Hemi V8. Come on, Dodge. Your customers aren't fools. They know what they love, and it's that roaring V8 engine. How about you just bring back the V8 and let's keep making some real muscle cars? Let's be honest here. This could really be the end of an era. We're already seeing the Challenger and Charger moving towards electric options or being swapped out for an inline-6 engine. As cool and futuristic as electric cars are, I don't think they'll ever truly capture what a muscle car is all about. Sure, they're fast and clean, but they'll never have that deep, raw power or that signature growl of a Hemi V8 or the mighty 392. I mean, can you really imagine a Charger without that rumbling sound, that feeling of the whole car shaking when you hit the gas? It's just part of the whole muscle car experience, and it's hard to picture it without it. So what's gonna happen to all these iconic cars in the future? I'm talking about the ones that have defined American muscle for decades. There's been a huge push for electric vehicles recently, right? But if you dig into it, you'll notice that even huge brands like Ford have been facing some serious struggles with their electric models. Take the Mustang Mach-E and the Lightning trucks, for example. Ford's been running into all sorts of issues, from software glitches to production delays and even quality control problems. And this is Ford we're talking about, a company with decades of muscle car history. If they're running into all these bumps along the way, what makes Dodge think they can just abandon their muscle car legacy and expect it all to work out? At least Ford had the guts to keep their real Mustangs, like the V8 versions. Ford didn't just toss them aside and say, okay, we're done. They promised to keep making those iconic V8 Mustangs for as long as they could, basically until they were literally forced to stop. It was a bit of a bold move, but it showed they still valued their heritage. Dodge, on the other hand, just decided to go in a completely different direction. They said, you know what? Forget the muscle cars. Let's turn the Charger and the Challenger into fully electric sports cars. Honestly, I can't help but feel like Dodge might be making a huge mistake here. It's like they're just giving up on everything that made them famous in the first place. I mean, muscle cars are practically in Dodge's DNA, right? They're the ones who made the Hemi engines legendary, the ones who gave us the iconic sounds and power that we loved. So to just suddenly walk away from that without any real warning feels like they're cutting ties with their history. And sure, going electric is definitely the future, but doing it like this, completely abandoning their roots, just doesn't sit right with a lot of fans. As for the future of Dodge, well, who knows? I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens. The auto world is changing fast, and we're looking at some big shifts, especially when it comes to EVs. Will Dodge's bold move pay off in the long run, or will they end up regretting it? We'll have to see how they do in 2025 and beyond. I'm honestly curious to see if the new electric muscle cars can live up to the legacy of the classics. Fingers crossed that Dodge doesn't lose its way. So what do you think about this? Let us know in the comments section. Also, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and activate the notification bell to stay updated with all our latest videos. While you're still here, click the video on your screen to see more interesting content like this one.